We are all taught never to burn a bridge. But what happens if you feel like it's justified? When you're angry and upset for childhood memories you never had. And you look at kids playing and laughing, going out for ice cream, and you think, I never had that. And what are you supposed to do when you feel like lashing out for being used as a pawn in some sick game of cat and mouse? As a child, no less. It was 1971. I was 5 years old and heard my mother screaming downstairs in the living room. I ran to find my father's hands clenched tightly around her neck. She could barely breathe, let alone talk, yet somehow she managed to yell the words, "Tina, get upstairs. I'm okay." My father was drunk. He was totally shit-faced. And finding him nearly choking my mother to death scared all of the childhood right out of me that night. My life was supposed to be okay. Our family lived in a tiny house in suburbia on a busy street in Tenafly, New Jersey. My father's name was Anthony. Tony, they called him, the gangers. He worked as a maitre d' in New York City. And with his dashing good looks and Gina cologne, he was a real showstopper. He idolized Sinatra, and now that I look back, he could have been part of the Rat Pack too. And he would brag about smuggling me into a bar as an infant to meet Mr. Sinatra himself. It sounds like a movie, but this is my story. Tony loved the nightlife, and he certainly loved his friends. He would do anything in the world for them, even if that meant being late to the hospital while my mother was in labor with me. After the divorce, my father continued to be late for everything. He missed the rent, the groceries, the heat, the alimony, and the child support. And when he remembered to pick us up for visitation, my brother and I were chauffeured into the back of a borrowed car, usually a Jaguar. And instead of going out for ice cream, we would drive across the George Washington Bridge and make our way to nightclubs and gambling dens, usually hidden behind some secret door. As a little girl, I learned to master the fine art of kissing pinky rings and the faces of dangerous, dirty old men. I will never forget being pulled and dragged across the streets of New York City, playing a game of hide and go seek with the loan shark my father owed money to. This isn't supposed to be how little girls grow up. At the age of 69, my father had no choice but to stop running from the demons that hunted him down. Tony suffered a massive stroke and lay in ICU in a self-induced coma, unable to walk, talk, or place a bet. My brother and I rushed to be at his bedside and were shocked to discover that all bets were still on. Our father was married yet a fourth time to a woman we never met. Not for love, but for cold hard cash and a green card. We all have a choice to burn or build the bridge, no matter what our circumstances or roads we've traveled in the past, even in the back seat of a Jaguar. There were more times than not that I wanted to retaliate and make war against my father. But I decided to play my hand differently. After my father's death, I went on to earn a master's degree and a securities license. I started badass budgeting and learning everything I could about money and investing and planning for the future. I started my own company working in the financial services industry. I guess you could say Dad taught me a little something about money in the end. So I ask this of you because you too have been burned. You may not have driven around the streets of New York like a Bronx Tale, but you have your share of Tonys in your life. Will you join me in building new bridges rather than burning them? Because letting it all go is the best route to drive. Thank you.